Hey YouTube, this video is to document my experience of the winter storm in Texas of 2021. Our normal highs on winter days are in the 50s to 60s, and we knew in advance that it was going to start getting cooler and snow was likely to happen. Our first clue to how bad it would be on the early morning hours of February the 11th, and there was over a 100-car pileup in North Fort Worth near downtown. Several people died in that pileup. And even though it got cold, the forecast was for it to get even colder than it was. They were forecasting record low temperatures in the 0-degree range. Now, before you start talking bad about us guys in Texas, we just don't have the infrastructure for this. Our pipes are not very deep. Our pipes are sometimes routed in the ceilings of the houses that are built. We don't have the insulation. We don't have the oil burning heaters. With the possibility of freezing pipes, I started stocking up on water. The first layer of snow was really dry and powdery. It was actually a normal snowy winter day in Texas. But about 2 o'clock Monday morning, we had our first blackout. And later on that morning, we figured out we would hear more about the word ERCOT than we ever wanted to hear. We were in rolling blackouts, which meant we had 1 hour of light and then 45 minutes of darkness. For lighting at night, I figured out we were going to have to be on battery power. So I happened to have a battery with an inverter out in one of my RVs, and I brought them in and charged the battery whenever we had electricity and run the lights and anything else that I could run off of that small inverter. The lowest temperature I saw on our thermometer was 9 degrees outside. It doesn't record temperature, so I don't know how low it actually got. Another area of concern with the rolling blackouts is that the pump stations for the natural gas lines would go down as well, resulting in low gas pressure, which provides heat for other people. One of the mistakes I made, and I know better, is to leave the electric gate open on snow events. The electric gate will not work well in the snow and the ice. So I had to get out and force the gate open enough so that we could get out of the driveway. You can see here some of the snow drifts were up to about 2 feet deep. And I'm sorry on these dash cam videos, I did not know that my window tinter had tinted the windshield in front of the dash cam. Driving on the first layer of snow, since it was dry, light snow, was not that difficult, and it's actually a very pleasant experience, and it looked like a winter wonderland out here. We were running low on a couple of provisions, and we had to deliver some supplies to other people, so we took a trip into town, and the scenery in town was very majestic as well. One of the hazards of driving in the snow and the ice is the other driver. I was sitting here by myself in a grocery store parking lot about 10 feet from everybody. And you'll notice a brown truck drives in front of me very cautiously and very slow. But you'll notice this white truck right behind him comes in at a high rate of speed, comes close to my truck, and then slides into his parking place. Those are the guys that we have to worry about. Over the next couple of days, more snow fell, and it was thicker and deeper on the streets. This kind of snow, though, was a little bit more wet and a little bit more dense. This was a freeway seen during the worst of the snow, and you didn't know whether to drive on the snow or the bald spots because the bald spots could be icy and frozen over. You didn't know what was treated. You didn't know what was sanded. You didn't have any idea of what the surface was that was going to be in front of you. And here's another example of another truck showing off and endangering people in the ice and snow in the town. We finally found some gasoline to refill the truck, but of course it was crowded with other people needing gasoline too. So now you've got lots of cars and trucks in a small area on slick ice and snow. After we got the gasoline, all I wanted to do was get ourselves away from all the other cars and the congestion of the traffic and get on some side roads so we were by ourselves. And finally, we were back on our road out in the country, and we didn't have to worry about other cars and traffic. It's hard to believe in a couple of days and all that snow and ice and the mayhem involved and the cold air, all that's left is a little spot of snow. So here's some final thoughts on my experience with this snow. We had plenty of food, we had plenty of water. However, we didn't have all the food that we wanted to eat, but we had plenty of food to eat because we had stored up food due to the COVID. We wrapped all our pipes and prepared all of our trucks and cars for all of the ice and the snow to come. So as a household, we prepared ourselves. We were not prepared for a lack of electricity. Some of our friends and relatives went 4 and 5 days, 6 days without electricity. That's a hardship. People died in this from freezing. So that was a serious thing. We had no alternative form of heat. The second thing was that I didn't think about was that the internet service provider would go down. So therefore you have no internet. Whether you have electricity or not, you have no internet. Your service provider has no electricity. So if you have a TV that's hooked up to streaming and no external antenna, you are at risk of not being able to get communication from the outside. The next thing was, yes, we had lights at night because I had a big battery and we could light up the whole house at night and be able to move through the house. If not, you're going to have flashlights and candles to be able to move through the house. Also, you need to fill your tub with water, not for necessarily drinking, but to be able to flush your toilet. Because there were people that were having to go out and scoop snow up and melt snow to be able to put water into their toilet so they could flush their toilet. The electricity going down created other problems. One of the major problems were the electric pump stations for the natural gas lines weren't getting electricity. So therefore, we were looking at a possibility of loss of gas pressure, and that would affect homes that are heated by natural gas. And one of my relatives, for instance, had lost all their electricity for 4 or 5 days. All they had was natural gas to keep their house warm. The next thing would be, if you lose the heat to your house, your pipes are going to freeze in this kind of weather. Well, in Texas, our houses are not built for this kind of weather. So where pipes are going to freeze, and now after the thaw, we're losing water pressure and people are losing water to their house. Going forward, what would I do different that I did this time? I would make sure I have some sort of battery power radio or battery powered TV to keep communication. A lot of the emergency communications were transmitted on the internet by Facebook groups and things like that. Well, if you have no internet service, then you can't get that access. So you need TV and radio communications. Also, data plans and internet service on cell phones was kind of limited because the cell phone towers are powered by electricity and everybody's going to be using the same source. So you may be limited on what you can get on the internet on your phone as well. The next thing I would want to be sure of is an alternative source of heat in a cold weather event, and also an alternative source for cooking our food. And one other thing to note is about relatives and friends. You may have yourself taken care of, but your friends and relatives may have a problem such as no electricity or no gas or no water. Getting to them may prove to be a challenge, or getting them to you may prove to be a challenge. Thanks for watching. If you watched all of this, it's what we learned. It's our experience in North Texas. It's unique to us. There are lots of people out there still to this day that don't have water pressure. There are lots of people out there still to this day, 6 days later, that do not have electricity to their house. So this is a serious, serious event. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.